Hey guys, my name is Nick and welcome back to the channel. In this relatively quick video, we're going to be taking a look at the Battle Titan Gatling Blaster. So this is one of the weapon options that you can have for a Reaver Titan or a Nemesis Warbringer Titan, both available from Forgeworld. It's a relatively straightforward build. I have done one before because I have got a Reaver Titan, but this was long before I did anything on YouTube. So what we're going to do is take a look at the components and the best way to put it together. So let's get straight into the video. So here we go then guys, a typical Forgeworld box that you get these weapon options in. You would have seen something similar for the Volcano Blaster or any of the other weapons, and in fact heads and so on. They all come in component boxes like this. Once you've taken the bubble wrap and the baggie out, you ended up with a whole bunch of components which I've already cleaned up, ready to do the assembly. So quick check to make sure that we've got everything here. So we have 6 barrels, we have a receiver, we have a magazine, we have a spindle for the actual barrels, we have a barrel spacer, and then we have a couple of cable connectors which aren't actually used in the build for the one for your Nemesis Titan. They're only used for your Reaver Titan. So I'm going to be potentially leaving those off in this build. All I wanted to do is make sure that everything sort of fits snugly, see if there's any green stuff gaps or anything, and also identify where I need to apply any adhesive. Also want to make sure that these barrels all kind of fit into their little recesses without any kind of wobble or any kind of problem. And just make sure that the little clip here, the little barrel spacer itself, isn't impeded, because there's some little notches or little recesses that are in those, and make sure that they're fully clear, so that when you come to actually build it, you're not then going, I didn't clear these out and it doesn't go together properly. So pretty happy that everything's cleared up. There's a little bit of excess in there. Let's clean that out, and then we can start using the adhesives in order to put this kit together. So this is the main body, so sort of the ammunition storage, I guess, of the big magazine for this Gatling cannon. Just double checking where all these join parts are so that we can get ready with my beloved JB Weld, which I use for all major load bearing or large surface connections for any of my Forgeworld or other Titans. I also have on standby some super glue. There will be an element of super glue, mainly for the barrel spacer that goes at the ends, because it's just a bit easier to apply with that. It's not load bearing, so we'll all be good. So what we're going to do is we'll mix up some of this and get going. So once the JB Weld has been suitably mixed, as usual, I use a cotton bud or a Q-tip to put these together. One final double check. You should always measure twice and cut once, as they say, and then we can start applying this carefully with the Q-tip into the areas where the two components are going to join together. You don't want to sort of go completely mad on some of these areas, because there is a little bit of a lip, and if you do too much, then it will squeeze out between that lip, and then you'll spend ages trying to clear it up. So just trying to make sure that I'm applying it to all the relevant places where it's not going to ooze out too much. So one of the big connection points here is that big inner piece here, and then we've got a little bit just over the top. Just being careful there, and similar on this side, just making sure I've got enough just to form that solid join just on those little side pieces there. But the rest of it, I'm going to apply a little bit more of this stuff, just making sure that I've got a nice thin, but not too thin coat, so that make sure that we actually have that adhesive area. And then this inner piece where the top casing goes into this magazine piece, making sure we get enough on there. You can see, just again, always double checking, make sure that in my mind I know exactly where I'm applying this stuff. And I just wanted to check these two sort of end pieces and that final big flat surface that we have on the right hand side of the magazine of the weapon. So we'll attack that bit next. Just double checking that, yep, that doesn't fully cover that open end. So what I'm going to do is apply it to the smaller piece, which will be a little bit easier to make sure that I don't overdo it on that large flat surface where you could end up putting too much on, and that'd be an issue. So just applying it to the other connection points as well, just so that I've got both surfaces coated with JB Weld, so that we get a decent adhesive bond. And I'm sure if you've seen any of my videos where I'm using this before, you're probably very, very familiar with this process. But I want to make sure that, this might be your first video you've seen, and you might only be looking specifically at this weapon. So you may not have seen my other videos before. If not, what are you doing with your life? Go and look at the rest of my videos immediately. But if you haven't and you're here, welcome, and we'll carry on just doing this demo of the JB World with this bit. So pretty happy with most of that now. Just tease it down that little end piece there, and that should be pretty much all we need to apply. So what we're going to do now is squeeze these two components together, and then we shall be good to go. Just give it a firm squeeze, make sure that everything is all lined up. It's not quite lined up, now it is. Then what I'm going to actually use is one of my many clamps that I've got, just so that it sets with some pressure applied to it, rather than just sort of leaving it in the corner. So I'm actually going to apply a clamp to that, just so that during that drying process it is under pressure as it cures. So just grabbing a handy cheapy clamp like this one here, just going to clamp the top and bottom halves just so that it cures under pressure. Give it a couple of squeezes just to make sure that it's got a firm grip, and then we can put that to one side for a second, and then we can move on to the barrels themselves. So we're going to take the rotary piece here and make sure that's sort of dust free. I think I've relatively cleaned up on that. So we can now just double check again. These are going to fit into the little lugs. You can see they're all keyed. They can only go in one direction and every barrel is the same. And then we can just get some of my beloved JB World, stick it on the end here, and also into the receiving end, so it's on both halves. And then we can press these two pieces together. Now you don't want to do all 6 barrels in one go without doing that spacer first. I found it much easier to do a couple of these. In fact, I do 3 of these first, apply the spacer, and then you can stick in the remaining barrels one at a time, and then attach them to the base and the spacer, and then everything is all good. Just make it a lot easier for me, and probably for you guys as well, if you're building one of these, is that weapon barrel spacer, as I said, just after the 3 that we do. So what I'll do now is just stick some more of this stuff into those receiving holes, just like this. This is why this Q-tip is so good, because it can get into there quite easily. The cotton doesn't sort of detach or anything like that. You can just put a little bit under control into where you need, and because they're super cheap, they are disposable. So once you've used them for this, the JB World's cured on the end of your Q-tip, you can then just throw them away because they are super cheap. So there we go, we can start just making sure that when I press these together I get enough bond on the surface. Just by sort of moving it around, you can actually feel how much adhesive or how much of the surface area is actually being affected by the weld. So you want to make sure that you've got enough in there that it's not a light join, because you want this to be as solid as a rock. Because once it's in your Bitzbox, on your model itself, and in the storage box is what I meant to say, yeah, you don't want these kind of snapping or breaking. So make sure you've got a good bond, and then we can be relatively happy that you're not going to have any unfortunate accidents with this weapon system. Now, I believe the first one I ever did of these, I hadn't heard of JB World, so basically I'd used a 2-part epoxy resin and a lot of pinning. Now pinning is very messy, very time consuming, but I find this stuff is really, really good. I do highly rate it to anyone doing these large crazy Forgeworld kits. It's cheaply available on Amazon, which is pretty much where I get it from. So once I'm happy with the volume eventually of the JB World, we just get the next couple of barrels on, straighten those up, and then we can go on to the spacer. Now if you really wanted to, you could paint the barrels individually and then glue them. But what I find often with some of these kits is if you do end up with unfortunate modelling gaps, which can happen, and then you assemble everything afterwards, you end up with those gaps you've then got to fill, which can then cause an inconsistency with your painting, or you can end up damaging your model where you're trying to force green stuff into where it needed to go to fill gaps. So for things like this, I find building everything not a problem for the paint job. So you can see here I've used that Gorilla Super Gel just to super glue to add in this barrel spacer, and because the super glue dries relatively quick, we can just pick it up and you can see that everything is where it needs to be. We can now add the remaining 3 barrels. And once the barrels are all done, this is the net result. And what I've done is actually put a cable tie around there. You could use an elastic band. You see I've got one there available. But I just used a cable tie in this example just to hold everything together so that there's no accidental knocking or wobbling or anything like that. and the barrels will just stay there as they begin to cure. So the base of the model there, the ammunition hopper and everything, isn't still set. So I've done this build in about an hour, I guess, including all the cleanup stage. And what I'm going to do is attach the barrels to the end of that ammunition hopper, and then I can leave the whole unit to dry overnight, and we can come back to it another time when everything is all set and ready to go. So you can see I've applied JB Weld to the magazine end. All I'm going to do now is put that on the receiving end as well, making sure that you've got really good surface coverage, because as I said, this is a weight bearing join, especially when this is held horizontally. You know, the weight of that resin will pull against itself, and you don't want that to break in any way, shape or form. And typically you end up manhandling from the barrel end as well, because especially when I'm going to go and magnetise these to fit onto my Titans, you don't want to sort of accidentally break anything. So making sure this has got a suitable quantity of this weld mixture on there, and then we can press these two together, and then we can put them aside to cure overnight. So with both halves ready to go, just make sure we've got the alignment correct, and then we can squeeze these two together like so. Give them a little twist and a wiggle to make sure the adhesive starts to you know, it's not completely, just so you can feel, in fact, that the bond is exactly right. Now I've gone through that many times with you guys on this channel before, and we can just put that aside in a cup, a coffee mug like I've got in that corner, and then that is the build of the Gatling Blaster complete. So there we go then, guys, that is the Gatling Blaster all put together. Pretty immense chunky piece of resin. I like it. Is it technically the best weapon option? I don't really care, but I've got one for my Reaver Titan. It means I can dual wield if I really want to, which I think will look quite cool. But for the moment, this is going to be going on the Nemesis Titan. So as you can tell, we're just doing the weapons first, and then we're going to get onto the Titan build itself. So we just cover the bits that are common to other platforms. So these are not unique, but I just wanted to go through the full build and unboxing process from my perspective, so that you guys can see what's going on. But I hope you enjoyed the video, hope you learned something new. If you did, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Catch you guys on the next video.